So I'm not sure what will give it away. I don't know if it's all red my eyes are or the lighting, but it's actually very late where I'm at now. It's exactly, just turned 9 minutes past 1 a.m. Typically, I would usually be asleep at this time, but you know what? I'm like, I wanted to record the day before. I wanted to record yesterday and I didn't. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna record now. And because there's something I want to share. And hey, I put it at the beginning of the last video that I shared. But I'm gonna actually call this series the scrap that, the curious case of the creative entrepreneur. So I'm just gonna share a bit about myself and like what I do, and also like share tips. I think I teach. I don't teach that much now, but I teach, and so I enjoy sharing how to do different things with different people. So that's something I might put in to the series. The last video I spoke about or introduced my poetry collections. So I will talk a little bit about that and like other things that I'm working on as well. Yeah, pretty much. So I just share like my insights on different things and how I feel we can overcome different challenges. So 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 I'm Lilanie, and this is my series, The Curious Case of the Creative Entrepreneur. And today the topic is what's in a name. All right, and that's going to be a very important thing to remember. Um, and I'm sure like a lot of people who actually know me in real life might feel a little bit refreshed by hearing me say that, because one of the last persons who I shared my book with, he was like, "Is this your book?" And I was like, "Yes, it's my book." And he's like, "Who's Lilanie?" And I'm like, "It's me." And he's like, "Why didn't you use a name?" And I'm like, "It's my name. It's my middle name." So a lot of persons would not know that. Fun fact: I never really liked my middle name. Uh, To be honest, I've started embracing it probably for the past maybe 5 years or so. At one point, I had started a line of candles and I named it Lilanie. And I changed the name. I might start by candles again, but who knows? Who knows what the future holds? I might. But yeah, that's the first time I really used my middle name to like do anything. And a lot of persons might wonder why, and I'm gonna get to that. Um, I never, so as I said, I never really liked my middle name. So sometimes people butcher. I don't want to say butcher, but a lot of times it's it's 3 syllables. But of course, anybody who knows Jamaicans know that when it comes to name, we're very lazy with calling names. So a lot of people might just say Lillian because they're more familiar with that, or Lillian, or something to that effect. um, and the common one, which is not a Jamaican thing, it's just right across the board. Persons will say Lilani, and I actually prefer that pronunciation, but that's not the pronunciation that my mother ascribed. So I typically, if persons say Lilani, I don't correct them because I prefer how it sounds, but I don't say it that way because the sound my mother ascribed to the name is Lilani. So yeah, again, I'm gonna say it. I did not like my middle name, and when I was younger, and persons would ask me what my middle name is, like when I was like a really little child, I would say it's Kimisha, something, something silly like that. So I'm Carice Kimisha, Kimisha. I guess I like the whole alliteration thing. I don't know. Um, but and my mother actually wanted it to be my first name. So the story is that she was listening to the radio. I think it's Love 101. Shout out Love 101 because that's really probably the only radio station my mother used to listen to um uh up until her recent passing. She, for probably like the last 4 years, she would listen to gospel JA now and then, but that's typically because like a lot of people would probably have moved from one radio station to the next and she wanted to keep up with them. But Love 101 was really her station. So shout out to Love 101 for that. And yeah, so she was listening to Love 101, I think. And it could have been another radio station, but as I said, Love 101 is her thing. And I think she heard someone with the name, and she was very adamant that that was going to be my first name. And I think my siblings were like, no. But to be honest, if I had gotten an L name for my first name, it would have been odd because all my other siblings, sisters particularly, their names start with either K or C. So I guess it was a save in that regard. But basically, I think my sister had a friend named Carice from school, and she was like, no, name her Carice. So she gave me Carice as my first name, and Lilanie was my middle name. And I never liked the name. Um, but to be honest, I think over time why I realized that it's a more unique name. One, uh, I never knew anybody with my name growing up. When I went to high school, though, there was one classmate that had the same name, and as I progressed throughout high school, there were like a few people that came with the name. So I realized it was kind of common. So I guess the commonness of it, and I already have like a common last name. So I have a common first. So now it seems like I have a common first and last name. Um, so I started to have a preference for my middle name on the basis that I believed it was more unique. But also, more importantly, I saw it as a reclamation. You know, it's me reclaiming who I was intended to be. Like that's the whole principle or guiding principle that's behind me choosing that name, that energy behind that name. And to be honest, uh, I'm happy that I chose that name, especially now, um, because it's a name my mother loved, even when I didn't like it. And I'm happy that she saw me owning the name before she passed. So that's also something that makes it really, really special to me, um, even more so than even when I chose it because it wasn't like when I published my book, my mother was ill or anything like that, or it was for my mother's sake why I chose the name I just did. I was like, when I choose a name, and at first I was going to be like, all right, I think out of shyness, I probably wanted to use like a made up name and nobody knows I'm the author and just find some way to market it without anybody knowing it's me and I was like, why do that? You know? Uh I think my books are special and not as special from the perspective of that I wrote them or anything, but they speak to people. They they have so many heartfelt thoughts and words. And I say it all the time, the words that I got in a lot of the poems that I wrote were gifts that kept me alive and sane and know that I have been able to put them together in a book, I get the opportunity to actually share them, to share the gifts that I got from God with other people. And that's something that's worth being celebrated. It's something worth being known for, right? And it's worth being bigger than Curry's while still being me, if that makes any sense. So yeah. So as I mentioned, and the thing is, whenever I look for like definitions or meanings behind my first name, I don't really come up with a lot. As much as it is as much as it's more common, it's the closest name to it that has a meaning is Kerry, which means what, brown eared boy. Not a boy. I don't think I look anything like a boy. I find it very hard to look like a boy with these. Uh, but, um, yeah, but Lilanie has so many other beautiful meanings. Like whenever I research it, it's will be close to like Lillian or Lily. So you know that the name Lily, which would be a flower, and that referring to purity, and then would also have done some research and it's closer to the name Leilani, which is a Hawaiian name meaning heavenly flower. It has so many beautiful meanings, and I think a lot of that beauty is captured in my work, in my poetry, in the words that chose. I'm not going to say that I chose, the words that chose me. So I think it was only fitting for that to be the name that I used. I hope this really sums up why I chose the name for like the persons who were like, why you didn't use your name? Yeah. So yeah. So that's it for me on what's in a name. Thank you for listening. Till next time.